Welcome, 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 welcome to the Mandate with MaShani Allen. So glad to have you all join me this evening. I was tempted to go on to another topic, but like the old folks say, it was more meat on this bone for Judas and Jesus. So we're going to do a part two of this teaching because to me, this is probably one of the most overlooked circumstances in the Bible. I say that because most times when Judas is spoke of, it's about the betrayal, but it's never about the restoration that Jesus provided to him, which again, we are talking about who is Jesus, and he is love. And that is an amazing picture of love that we never really pay attention to and not fully grasp the display of what Jesus did. So I want us, and I know when I first started these teachings on the who is Jesus, we started in Genesis, but I want to go back there and then make our way back to the New Testament. So I'm making sure that I'm laying a strong foundation as to why we are studying Jesus the way that we are. So for some of you, this is a recap, and then for others, this might be the first time that you have heard this. So when we go to the beginning, which we know is Genesis chapter 1, I like us to look at verses 26 and 27. Again, this is after God had created everything. In verse 26 in the Voice translation, it says the following. Now let us conceive a new creation, humanity, made in our image, fashioned according to our likeness. Again, made in our image, fashioned according to our likeness. And then it goes on to saying, let us grant them authority over all the earth and more. In verse 27, it says, so God did just that. He created humanity in his image, created them male and female. And again, when we look at the Hebrew meaning of the word image, it means resemblance. It means a representative figure. And likeness also means resemblance, model, fashion, manner, similitude. And the reason why I brought us back to Genesis is because as believers, our role in the earth is to be image and likeness like God and like Jesus was in the earth when he was here. And I think that we can get caught up on so many things that we forget that image and likeness is what he has always been after. And there are so many traits and characteristics that many people focus on, but I'm going back to the beginning. I'm going back to God. And I want to fully understand what it means to be image and likeness in the earth. And the way we find that understanding and the perfect template and model of that is Jesus himself. Because just like he was image and likeness in creation, when he came into creation, he represented image and likeness in the earth to us, which is why he is our model. He is our template. He is our example. And that is what we as individuals and as the kingdom as a whole are supposed to represent. And when I started really focusing on image and likeness, man, it shifts the way you see things. It shifts the way you like things. Because when you start saying, is that really the image of God? Is that really the likeness of Jesus on display? It really causes you to go beyond a person's gift and beyond a person's ability to really get to the heart and to see if that heart reflects the image and the likeness of God and of Christ. So I wanted to look at the passage again that deals with Judas, but I also wanted to look at some other passages as well. So this Bible study will definitely give you all some material to go back and look at. But we're going to start today's Bible study in John. Now, last week, I think I mainly dealt with verses in Matthew and Luke, but today we're going to start with John, and we're going to look at John 34 and 35, chapter 13. Now, what I find interesting, I think I had mentioned it previously or last week's teaching, that in one of the versions of the Gospels, when Jesus told Judas whatever he was going to do it quickly, that was actually John. It's actually John 13, verse 27. Then said Jesus unto him, that thou doest, do quickly. And the Amplified version of that same verse, it says, what you are going to do more swiftly than you seem to intend, and make a quick work of it. Those were the instructions that Jesus gave to Judas. But with us going to John 13 through 34 through 35, we see that after Jesus dismisses Judas, and now it is the 11 disciples or apostles that are left with him. This is what Jesus says to them. A new commandment I give unto you, that ye love one another as I have loved you, that you also love one another. By this shall all men know that you are my disciples, if you have love for one another. And you know, that passage alone can be its own Bible study. Because if that is the litmus test that we should be using to determine if people should be able to see God in us, a lot of us aren't faring well in that area when it comes to love. Now, that same passage in the Voice translation says, so I give you a new command. Love each other deeply and fully. Remember the ways that I have loved you, and demonstrate your love for others in those same ways. Everyone will know you as my followers if you demonstrate your love to others. Now, this wasn't just a suggestion. This was a command. And the command wasn't to be as gifted as you possibly can. The command wasn't to have as many followers as you can possibly get. The command wasn't be as articulate as you can possibly be. The command was to love. And the command that he gave to them, that same command is for us. And it's not just to love, but to love each other deeply and fully. And you know, it's interesting because when you get to meet different believers and you get to hear their testimony and their story, and you hear their love story between them and God, it really is interesting because some people have just experienced him in such a way, they have experienced his love in such a way, but the question is, for the way that they have experienced his love, have they shared that depth, that dimension, and that realm of love with other people? Because when we do that purely and genuinely, people will know who we really follow. Okay? Now, again, the passage that really got my attention and that we've been speaking of has come from Matthew 26, 48 through 50. Because from what I gather, John speaks of the betrayal from Judas. Let me see. See, it's interesting because in John's portrayal of the betrayal, it doesn't show Judas kissing Jesus on the cheek. If anything, it shows a level of Jesus's power in that moment. But we can talk about that in another Bible study. But if you want to know what John's portrayal of Judas's betrayal was, you would want to look at John 18. He gives a different account. His account is different from all of the other ones. So it's a very interesting account compared to the other gospels. But let's look at Matthew 26, verses 48 through 50. And we're going to park right here for just a little bit. And I know that I've read this last week, but I really want us to look at it again. So Matthew 26, 48 through 50 reads, "And Judas, the one who intended to betray him, had said to the elders and chief priests that he would give them a sign. I'll greet him with a kiss, and you will know that the one I kiss is the one you should arrest." So at once he went up to Jesus. "Greetings, teacher." He kisses him. Jesus again says, and this part gets me every time I read it, "My friend, do what you have come to do." That phrase sounds like two sentences that don't go together. How do you say "my friend" and then say "do what you have come to do," meaning betray me? And this is why I know with everything in me that the love that heaven expresses is nowhere near the love that we express here on earth. Because first of all, he told him to do it quickly. Then he tells him to do it. That part right there. So you don't, and the way this is read in all of the passages, it doesn't sound like Jesus was angry. It doesn't sound like Jesus was mad. It doesn't sound like Jesus was frustrated. It doesn't even sound like Jesus felt like he was being betrayed. Because most times when you're being betrayed, you're not going to call the person who's betraying you friend. And what is interesting is in the Gospels, it is recorded that Jesus called two people friend. Now we know there's a verse that talks about the one whom he loved, and there are others who have said that people were friends to Jesus, but there are two that he called friend. One was Judas, the other one was Lazarus. And when you look at the picture of both of their lives, it would seem like one of them was misnamed, but Jesus didn't do anything by mistake, and he didn't do anything by accident. Everything he did, and definitely everything he said, was on purpose. And we can look at him with Lazarus, and we can embrace him calling Lazarus a friend. But that same heart, compassion, love of expression that he had for Lazarus, is the same heart, love, and expression that he had for Judas. Oh my gosh. And then what gets me with this whole passage, when you read all of Matthew 26, is you see him tell the other disciples that my betrayer is here. But when he is talking to Judas face to face, he does not call him what he did. He does not allow that to be the title or the way in which he addresses him. The works of Judas did not define Judas in the eyes of God. Let me say that again. The works of Judas did not define Judas in the eyes of Jesus. And it's interesting because in the service that I was in on Sunday, the apostle said something that I thought was just so powerful. And one of the things that she said was, God always has open hands. And we can look at people's lives, we can look at people's histories, we can look, some people not even at their history, we can look at their now. And we will say, because of the things they have done, because of the life that they have lived, that it is impossible for them to come to a place of knowing God. When many of us know the scripture that says, whosoever shall call on the name of the Lord shall be saved. So why do we close hands on people when God's hands are always open? I believe that that moment was so key and so pivotal, and it is a picture of how God sees us. Despite our wrong, despite our error, it never stops his love. Like, let me find it. The scripture just came to me. Hold on. Let me get it. Let me get it. Let me get it. Let me get it. Romans 8:35. We quote this. We quote this verse. But can we quote this verse and see Judas in it? Here we go. Who shall ever separate us from Christ's love? Shall suffering and affliction and tribulation, or calamity and distress, or persecution, or hunger, or destitution, or peril, or sword, even as it is written, for thy sake we are put to death all the day long. We are regarded and counted as sheep for the slaughter. Yet among these things we are more than conquerors. Is that the verse that I want? Yeah, for the most part it is. Because this verse tells us that nothing shall separate us from the love of Christ. And we see that clearly, that Judas's betrayal did not cause a separation. Oh my God. Judas's betrayal did not cause him to be separated from Christ. Christ still called him friend. Oh my goodness. We read these scriptures, but he lived these scriptures. And the story of Judas and Jesus is a beautiful picture of us seeing that nothing shall separate us from the love of Christ. Nothing, not even betrayal, was strong enough to separate. That wasn't even in my notes. So another passage that I wanted us to look at, because the other thing that I feel so strongly when I read Matthew chapter 26, I don't just see love in operation when Jesus calls Judas friend. Another thing that I see in operation is compassion. And I looked up some verses that dealt with compassion. It's a word that we use, but let's look at these verses because I really want us to be able to see the way Jesus was viewing Judas, not through our eyes, but the eyes of God and the eyes of Christ. In 2 Corinthians 1 and 3, it says, all praise goes to God, Father of our Lord Jesus, the Anointed One. He is the Father of compassion, the God of all comfort. When Jesus called Judas friend, not only did he provide him with compassion, but I believe he also brought him a sense of comfort, knowing that he was forgiven by Jesus. Now his guilt took over, but Jesus did his part by providing the compassion and also releasing a level of comfort in his heart. In Matthew 20, verse 34, it says, so Jesus had compassion. In Mark 1:41, it says, then Jesus moved with compassion. And when I saw he had and he moved, I believe that Matthew 26 showed us that he spoke with compassion. And that word compassion, it means to be moved as to one's bowels. Hence, to be moved with compassion, it means to have the bowels were thought to be the seat of love and pity. And I don't believe Jesus had pity on Judas, but I definitely believe he had a great compassion and a great level of love for Judas. In Psalms 86 and 15, it says, but you, O Lord, are a God full of compassion and gracious, long-suffering and abundant in mercy and truth. Now I'm going to read the same version in the Voice translation, but I'm going to put Jesus right there. Because when I put Jesus right there, we can see how Jesus called Judas friend at that moment. But Jesus, you are full of compassion, generous in grace, slow to anger, and boundless in loyal love and truth. What we see in Jesus calling Judas friend is a picture of loyal love. And what a beautiful picture it is. In Psalms 140, 145 and 8, it says, the Eternal is gracious. He shows mercy to his people. For him, anger does not come easily, but faithful love does, and it is rich and abundant. This is the image and the likeness that we are supposed to portray, that we are supposed to give, that we are supposed to pour, that we are supposed to reflect. In John 17:21 through 23, in the Voice translation, it says, Father, may they all be one, as you are in me and I am in you. May they be in us. For by this unity, the world will believe that you sent me. All the glory that you have given to me, I pass on to them. And we can say, all the love that you have given me, I pass on to them. All the grace that you have given me, I pass on to them. All the compassion that you have given me, I pass on to them. May that glory, may that love, may that grace, may that compassion unify them and make them one as we are one. I in them and you in me, that they may be refined, so that all will know that you sent me and you love them in the same way you love me. This lines up with our Genesis 1. They were together in unity in the heavens, and this is him declaring that they in us, well, God in us in relationship through Jesus should have that same level of unity which Jesus walked in the earth. And with that unity and communion comes a greater level of love. And it's not the humanistic, it's the only kind of love that God and Jesus himself can give to us. And when we are in communion, just like Jesus is a picture and a model of love, this is the image and likeness that we are called to represent. And I think that if we take our time focusing on these attributes, focusing on these characteristics, we'll come to discover a lot of what's being said and a lot of what's being done. If this is the checklist, a lot of things aren't lining up. But we want our lives to line up with image and likeness. And for image and likeness to have its greatest work, to shine its brightest light, to go to the farthest places and have its greatest influence, image and likeness, the core has to be love. And when Jesus called Judas friend, that was one of the most beautiful expressions of love. I pray that you enjoyed this Bible study, and we will definitely have another person next week that we will share with you that shows God and Jesus as love in a different light and in a different way. Be blessed, and we will speak soon.